a Buddhist priest. Uh, Bernie felt that it didn't make any sense for Father Kennedy to ordain as a Buddhist priest because he was already a priest in his own Catholic tradition. So he ordained him as a Zen teacher. He didn't ordain him, I mean, he empowered him as a Zen teacher, but not as a Zen Buddhist priest. So Bernie pulled those two training paths apart to separate them. And that was somewhat radical at the time in which he did it because it wasn't usually done that way. It was usually put together. And I have followed Bernie's way here with this Zen Center so that a person could go on the teacher training path, which is quite rigorous and takes quite a long time, and end up being empowered as a Zen teacher, but not as a priest. And that we would call that person a lay Zen teacher. A person like Junmei, you just saw ordained as a novitiate priest. Many years from now, when she has really embodied that archetype and is functioning as a priest, hopefully she'll receive a full empowerment as a Zen priest. She's also on a Zen teacher training path. Myogetsu has been training as a Zen novitiate Zen priest for many years now, and any of you that know Myogetsu will probably agree with me that she fully embodies the archetype of a priest, and she's functioning that way. She's authentic. So I am going to recognize her through a series of ceremonies that are private during the sesshin, and then we'll have a public coming out of her as a fully empowered Zen priest on the Sunday after the sesshin ends. And that will give her an empowerment to have people study with her, just not studying koan study, but studying the precepts. And any of you could decide to become, we would still call it a Zen student, but basically you're a Zen student who chooses to study with Myogetsu and study the precepts with her in private. And then at the end of that study period, you could receive the Jukai precepts from her in the Jukai ceremony. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. It makes sense. I still don't understand what a fully empowered teacher can do that a fully empowered priest can't do, or vice versa.
Quite a lot. A fully empowered Zen teacher can do koan study with students. Okay. And Myogetsu cannot do that as a priest. Okay. Until she's empowered as a Zen teacher.
And priests can do different services that lay teachers cannot?
That there's a lot of variety there in how that works and functions in Zen centers. There are lay traditions like Eiken Roshi's where they're all lay Zen teachers, but they do, obviously they want to do services as well, so they do services. In general, I would say the way that falls here is that if you're a priest, you're being empowered to hold the space for a ritual service. And you do that often by being the officiant. You also learn all the positions for how to do service, and you're empowered to conduct weddings, to do memorial services, things such as that.
Excuse me. I just would like to ask everybody online to please mute.
I do have a question.
Okay.
Good morning, Roshi. So I'm new. This is my third week.
Yeah.
So the idea of being a Zen student and getting taught by a Zen teacher really interests me. So how do I go about it? Like, to get more training in Zen.
Yeah. So usually when you're starting out here at the Zen Center, we ask you to take a little bit of time to get to know the Sangha, to get to know the teachers. In the case of this Zen Center, we have two empowered teachers, myself and Jun Roshi. And so you have a choice as to which teacher you would want to study with. But at the point at which you're wanting to find out more about what's involved in being a Zen student, if that's your intention, I would ask you to probably meet with both me and Jun Roshi, and then to make sure that it's right for you, and take a little time to decide that, and then decide which teacher you want to study with based on who you resonate with. And I often tell people that are starting out to go look at other Zen centers too, because I think when you're looking for a Zen mentor, it's important that you take a little time and make sure that it's right for you in your heart with that person, that you have some kind of connection with them. And if you haven't been to any other Zen centers, you don't have anything to compare to, or maybe a Tibetan center or another Buddhist kind of practice. So I encourage people to go out and explore a little bit before they make a final decision. Sometimes people know what they want right away, and sometimes it takes a little time. But you're certainly welcome to, anyone is welcome to be a Zen student here. And if you're interested in that, you should talk to either me or Jun Roshi about it. Send you an email? Huh?
Thank you.
Send us an email, and then we would set up a meeting. That if you're in the area, we'd probably meet face to face, but if you're from a distance, we would meet on a Zoom call. I'm studying with Scott. Scott's studying with me. He's in Virginia, so I do Zoom calls with him. Carlene is studying with Jun Roshi, and she's in Canada. So, but basically, you would, if you're interested in studying Zen here, you want to have some kind of a meeting with either me or Jun Roshi and talk, so we can talk about it more.
Roshi, maybe you want to talk just a second about Jukai, what that means.
What Jukai is? So Jukai is receiving the precepts, and in our tradition, it's huge. It's really interesting. The way it was done traditionally in Japan is usually the precepts are studied at the very end of koan study, because the Japanese felt that you really couldn't understand the precepts unless you'd gone through many, many, many koans to clarify your life. And so when I received the precepts from my Zumi Roshi, he just said one day, he says, "Joshin, you want to have Jukai?" And I said, "Okay," but I didn't know what it was. And I just took the precepts. I didn't know what I was getting into. I should have asked. And it was the same thing when I ordained as a priest. I was really too young, and he asked me a few years later if I wanted to ordain as a priest. And again, I said yes, but I didn't know what I was getting into. So for most teachers, at least in the white plum lineage, we usually begin, if someone is starting out Zen training, we begin by studying the precepts. So I'm both an empowered Zen teacher and a Zen priest, as is Jun Roshi. So we can, usually the way we begin Zen training is to have a person study the precepts. Jun Roshi can speak for herself, but the way I handle that is I don't require that someone do Jukai at the end of, usually what would happen is you would study the precepts, and then you take the precepts in a public ceremony called Jukai. And Ju means with, and Kai means precept. So you receive the precepts, and in that case, I'm functioning as a preceptor who gives the precepts. But in my case, I've had students that have gone all the way through the studying the precepts and don't want to take the public ceremony and don't want to receive a Buddhist name or any of that, and I'm fine with that. And then whatever the case, whether someone takes Jukai at the end of studying the precepts with me or not, then usually we go on to koan study after that. But many of you have seen the Jukai ceremony here at the Zen Center. It's a beautiful ceremony in which a person really makes a commitment to live those precepts as best they can, and the Sangha witness it. They receive a Buddhist name. They receive raksu like this. They often sew it themselves, or in the case of a priest ordination, they receive an okesa, and they receive a lineage chart that traces their lineage from Shakyamuni Buddha through my teacher to myself, if they were studying with me. Is that clear?
Yes, yes, thank you so much.
Okay.
So if I can clarify along the same lines that Christine was, when Miyagetsu receives her full ordination, technically, what is your name? Not Robert. What is your name that just asked the question?
Vikas.
Kaz. So Kaz could ask Miyagetsu to receive precepts through her.
Yes.
Okay, I wanted to clarify because you said ask June, Roshi June or Roshi Robert, but actually there'll be 3 people now. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
There'll be 3 people that are mentoring people, and the empowerments are slightly different because Myogetsu isn't empowered as a Zen teacher.
Teacher,
but
right.
She is empowered to give the precepts. Now, it's very common in Japan for certain teachers to specialize in the precepts. And so it's not uncommon for you to have a root teacher that you begin with, but the root teacher might actually suggest that you go study with this other person who's really known for the precepts, and you could actually study the precepts and receive Jukai with that person, but still have your root teacher be your root teacher.
So I had a question now too. That was more of a clarification. This is a pure question. You used the word secular earlier. You said we're a secular center.
I said our style is...
Okay, so would you talk about that a little bit, what that
Well, I
means?
don't really like that word, but
I don't either, actually.
but I don't have a better word for it, but our style is informal. And I perceive the traditional Zen style to be quite formal and rigid in terms of our culture. And this is just my personal sense of it. The Zen, there's a place for traditional Zen centers, and there are pros and cons for doing it either way. But I decided, Jun Roshi and me trained in a very traditional way and ran a Zen center. Then started the Zen Center of Hawaii in 1994, in training in a very traditional Zen way. When we arrived here in Chicago in 1903, I'm sorry, yeah, I'm changing the dates here. When we got here in 2003, we bought a house on Humphrey, and we started out doing traditional Zen training. And we did several ongos there, and I think the last ongo we did there, we had like 4 people in the ongo and maybe 8 members. And we were dying on the vine, essentially, doing very traditional Zen training. And I began to feel that here in Chicago, I didn't grow up in the Midwest, I grew up in California, but my perception was that if someone came into the Zen Center from the outside and they didn't know anything about Zen practice, and they saw us walking around in black robes, looking at the floor, it would look very strange to an outsider. In fact, it would look kind of cultish. And I decided that I have a very strong feeling that Zen is relevant for our time, and I wanted to make Zen more accessible to more people. And I felt that the style of our practice was turning people away. So I changed the style. I took out a lot of the formality. I took out a lot of wearing robes all the time. As you notice, I don't wear robes unless I'm in a formal situation. And I created a core curriculum based on mindfulness and trying to really bring the teachings down to earth without any in language, in terms, like there's trying to make the teachings down to earth and make sense in our culture. So there's parts of Japanese tradition that are really wonderful. And so it's threading a needle. It's like you have to I'm trying to decide what parts are valuable that we keep in the tradition and what parts need to be changed so that we upgrade the tradition so it works in our place and time.
I'm quitting.
So does that make sense? That's how I've been working with it.
Roshi,
Yeah.
can I take a crack at the spirituality question or the secularity question for a second?
Yeah.
So if anybody here doesn't know me, I'm Robert Schwach. My Buddhist name is Kanjo. I'm the president of the Zen Center at the moment, board president. And this secularity question is a big thing that attracted me to this center, having started in a Zen school that was very traditional, a Korean school that forms were very, very traditional, sort of what Robert was just talking about. I think there's sort of a spectrum here. There's secularity, there's spirituality, and there's religion. Religion is sort of the formal practice with all the rituals and compelled beliefs and all that stuff, and it's gotten a little bit of a negative connotation with some people because certain religious traditions in our culture have been abusive. So I feel like our center is not secular because it's spiritual. It sees a sacred aspect to these teachings and to the practice. But we're informal when it comes to the religious practice and the beliefs. There's more, we have ritual, we have tradition, we respect all that stuff, but we update it into the modern world, and those things can be adopted as much or as little as the practitioner wants. So I really feel like we're a spiritual center, and we don't run away from that. So that makes us not secular. But when it comes to the religion of Buddhism, we do take an informal. Would you say that's right, Roshi?
Yeah. Yeah, we're not teaching mindfulness. We're always teaching mindfulness using neuroscience and psychology and Western modalities, but we're always teaching in the context of a Buddhist path of awakening, always. But that's in the background. It's not necessarily up front. So I think what Robert is saying very well is that we are if you're at a traditional Zen center and you kind of, there's pressure to be a Zen student in a traditional Zen center. That's what makes you part of the Sangha. But we changed that when we started the Zen center to make it possible for you to be a member of the Sangha without studying Zen with Jun Roshi or me. And I felt like that makes a much broader Sangha, frankly, more interesting Sangha with people that have different needs and different interests. And many of you that are in the Sangha that aren't studying Zen are still interested in Zen and take classes here, may come to retreats, and but you're not studying in a formal way with Jun Roshi and me, and there's no pressure for you to do that. Which I think in a formal Zen center, there would be more sense that you need to be actually studying with a teacher. And that's one thing that's different here.
Good morning, everyone. I just feel like I'm the type that Roshi just described. I've been in the center for many years, but I haven't really studied as well. But I mean, the center really offers a lot of opportunities for us to explore. So it's more like what the person want to commit to. So I think that is instead of being asked, you are willing to do that, and I think that's very beautiful for our center.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We do services where we chant sutras, and there's a small group of people that do that here, and not everyone wants to do that. It's all right. And and that's actually often the case in Zen centers, that there are people that like doing ritual services and there are people that don't, and kind of skip town when the service shows up. And that's all right. But people might not understand why we do services, And really, the reason we do services is to dedicate the merit of that service to others, to dedicate any. When we chant a sutra, we're usually chanting a sutra that's embodying an ultimate teaching about reality. And it's usually, like in the case of the Heart Sutra, it's a pith instruction that's been reduced down from volumes of Prajnaparamita teachings to one page of a Heart Sutra, which is the pith instruction of that ultimate teaching. And we're chanting that sutra because it's something valuable. It's speaking about something truthful in the ultimate sense. And then we always dedicate the merit of the sutra to Buddhas and Bodhisattvas throughout space and time. We do another service where we dedicate the merit to people in our Sangha that are sick. We also dedicate the merit to, we have what we call a death and transition list. So someone that's died within the past year, we put them on that list and we dedicate the merit to them. So the idea of doing a service is we're making an offering of ourselves to the world. I'll give you an example. We do the traditional service on the third Sunday of the month. We do the Gate of Sweet Nectar on the first Sunday. We were doing the Gate of Sweet Nectar last Sunday, and a homeless guy walked in right in the middle of the service and sat down there. And at the end of the service, I walked over, and he was a middle-aged black man, and he was homeless, and he said he was tired. He hadn't slept in days, and he was trying to get somewhere. So, we gave him some money and sent him on his way. But that Gate of Sweet Nectar service is actually inviting hungry ghosts to come and be present. So it was interesting that he came in as we were doing the service. So I don't expect everyone to understand why we do services, but it's part of our tradition, and we'll continue to do them because it's how we trained, and we find it, those of us that do it, find it valuable and meaningful. Doesn't mean that everyone has to do it, but you're always welcome to join us. So if you have a question?
No, I was just going to clarify what you said at the end, that anybody can join the services.
Yes,
Yeah.
People don't necessarily know that.
Yeah. And
You don't have to be a Zen student or anything. Anybody can come to a service. Yeah.
And then I just wanted to say, I'm really interested in learning more about Ango too.
Yeah, I'm going to get to that now. Yeah. So we have done Angos on and off. We don't always do them every year. I'm trying to do them now every year. And it's a tradition that developed in Asia when, during the monsoon season, when the monasteries were, they couldn't go out and farm or do anything. They were really stuck indoors because it was raining all the time. And so they began doing these 3-month trainings that we call Ango. I think Ango literally means peaceful dwelling. And so in our tradition, we also do, the first Ango I ever did, I was the Benji for Bernie, who was the Shuso at Zen Center Los Angeles. Huh? Benji? I was his attendant. And none of us knew what we were doing. And I had a big notebook where I recorded all the details of the ritual and everything we were doing, and there was a lot of it. And Maizumi Roshi wanted to teach it to us. And so that was the first Ango I ever did, and I've been doing them ever since. And there are quite a few reasons why we do an Ango. One, we want to, on the Zen side, we want to be able to create an opportunity here for those who want to go deeper into their Zen practice. You don't have to be a Zen student. All you have to do is be a member. And the Ango is an opportunity for you to raise the bar on what practice means to you during this 3-month training period. And we have a schedule. It begins with a retreat. It ends with a retreat. There's a head trainee called the Shuso, which in this case is Reverend June May. And she will lead a study group every other week, and I will lead a class on the 5 Buddha family energies and the Yogacara teachings of the 8 consciousnesses during the Ango, and that's available just to people in the Ango. But the idea is that you make a very intentional commitment to deepen and strengthen your spiritual practice. And that often means increasing the amount of meditation you might do during the week. But the way in fact, I have this, someone you can look at if you want. I'm framing this Ango in terms of the 5 wisdom energy mandala, because the mandala is all of life, so to speak. And so it gives us a kind of rich lens through which to look at and appreciate what practice is, because you might think practice is just meditation. The practice is all of life. It's relationships, it's livelihood. And so the 5, what I'm trying to do is to frame the Ango in terms of this mandala, which has 5 aspects. And those 5 aspects are 5 areas where you could think of deepening and increasing your practice. So the first area is what's called the Buddha family energy, which has to do with contemplation and meditation. So you might decide you want to increase the amount of meditation you're going to do during the week in some way. Another area of the mandala has to do with study. And you might say, I'm going to take a class with Joshin Roshi and study the Yogacara teachings and really learn about what that means. That would be increasing your practice through intellectual study. You might want to read a sutra or a text or something and use the Ango as an opportunity to do that. So you're clarifying your life through studying. Another area the mandala has to do with the Ratna Buddha family, which has to do with resources. It has to do with livelihood. It has to do with earthiness and stability and groundedness. That area could have to do with taking care of yourself physically, actually working out or going to the gym or eating better. Taking care of your well-being could be in the Ratna area. It could also have to do with your livelihood. Maybe there's something you need to do in your life to have more stability in terms of how you make money or whatever, and that you could think of that as actually a spiritual practice. Then there's the Padma area of the mandala has to do with juice, passion, juiciness, relationships, liveliness, connecting to each other intimately, authentically. It has to do with creativity and integration. So that's a whole nother area of the mandala where you could think of, you might want to use that as a lens through which you make some kind of commitment in terms of people in your family or somebody you know or someone that you want to know or whatever that could be. Yes? And then the final area is the karma family, which is the doing energy. It's getting things done. Maybe you need to clean out your basement. That would be karma energy. Or you need to organize something, or you want to go out and advocate for something politically. That could very definitely probably be, we call it social action. You would be engaging in the world, and if you've ever done any grassroots organizing, you will appreciate that it takes a lot of organizing skills to do anything in the world. So that's karma family. So you can see now how these 5 areas are 5 ways you can enrich your life, and think of those as aspects of your spiritual path, not just your livelihood or your relationship, but you're actually treating it, looking at it through a spiritual lens to see what does that mean for you. And so I'm going to talk about the 5 Buddha families not next Sunday, Robert's giving a talk, and then the Sunday after that, I'm going to spend the whole talk just talking about the 5 Buddha families, because they're very rich. They're a tantric teaching, and they have to do with transmuting a negative emotion into a wisdom energy. And, but I don't think we have the time to go into that here today. But I have been working with the 5 Buddha family energies most of my practice life since I was studying with Trungpa Rinpoche. I first learned about them well over 30 years ago. And I find them very rich. And when we do the Gate of Sweet Nectar, and it says in that sutra, we're raising the Bodhi mind. When we raise the Bodhi mind, concretely, that is inviting these 5 energies to be present. Because when they are present, from our perspective, that's the wholeness of life. So they have an internal energy which can't be conceptualized, which is why it's a kind of a tantric teaching, that they have to do with purifying our emotions. And usually our emotions are somewhat distorted by conceptual duality. And when that emotion is clarified, it begins to function as an enlightened energy. So the other thing here to appreciate is you might think enlightenment is monolithic, kind of like Russia was before the wall came down. We thought Russia was one place. It turns out it's like 30 different countries. Well, enlightenment has, according to the teaching of the 5 Buddha families, is expressed in 5 different energies, and each one is different. And each one is an expression of awakening energy. And so I think that becomes very rich, and there's a lot more I could say about this, but I think I'll hold off and wait till a couple of Sundays from now to go into this in more detail. But you might have questions about this or about the Ango. Basically, what we're asking you to do is make a commitment, and then to meet with Junmei to talk about what that commitment would be for you. We're trying to make this as flexible as possible because we know that, you know, you live busy lives, you have other commitments. And so we want to try to make this training something that you can do, that would be doable with your busy life. So normally Mongos would usually be done in a monastery, but we're not a monastery. None of us are monastics. We're all people that have, many of you have jobs and families and you're busy. So we're trying to make this work in the context of the lives we actually have. So that's, the Ango begins with an opening ceremony on September 1st, in which we, the other thing that happens in Ango is we start treating the Zen Center as a temple. And to treat it as a temple means we have to kind of tighten up how we're functioning together. And people take on different positions. Someone takes care of the altars. Someone's taking care of chanting. Someone's taking care of timekeeper, bells, all those positions for services and how the temple functions get tightened up during Ango. And Shuso will go with, she has a Benji, which will be Kaido in this case, and they will do a, excuse me, they will do rounds of 6 altars in the Zen Center every day, where they go and offer incense and they chant a short mantra at the altar. So we're treating the Zen Center as a temple. And one thing I encourage people to do before, when we've done Angos in the past, if you're in the Ango, that you treat your home as a temple and just ask yourself, what does that mean? It doesn't mean that you have to, do all the rituals and stuff, but what would it mean if you just, in your imagination, with your intention, you thought, what would be different if I thought of my home, not just as my home, but as a temple? And how would that change? Sandy.
Yeah, thank you, Roshi Robert. This has been very, very instructive. Is the graphic for the mandalas on the website?
It
Or
is.
it is, okay.
Yeah, there's two of them. So it's, I will try to explain this in 2 weeks, but there's one that's just called the, oh, I've got both on here. Yes, it's on the website. There's one that's just called the 5 Buddha Family Mandala, and then there's another one that's a little simpler that's called the Personal Practice Mandala, which I've tried to simplify so that it would be clearer to you what that means in terms of practice. So they're both on the website on the page for the Ongo.
Oh, thank you, okay.
The other thing we've done to try to, we want this to be intentional. We want it to be clear that you're either in the Ongo or not. Now, if you're not in the Ongo, you can still take retreats, and I'll be teaching some classes during the fall, a Path of Zen series and a class on nonviolent communication. Those are being done outside of the Ongo. But if you're in the Ongo, then you have access. We're asking people to pay a nominal fee of $285, which is the price of one retreat, a 7-day retreat. And for that $285, you get access to the whole Ongo training. So you have access to attending both the fall retreat and the winter retreat for that fee, along with any of the teachings that happen during the Ongo, and you get to participate in the Ongo actively as a participant for that. That's a deal. Now, you can't do that if you want to go to both retreats and you think, I could pay $285, that's a deal. But if you pay that, you're joining the Ongo. To be clear, you can't, it's not a shortcut, to get a deal. You get the deal if you if you commit. And the slogan for the Ongo is commitment is our compass.
Could you say what the end date is?
Yeah, the beginning, we'll have an opening ceremony on September 1st, on the Sunday that our fall 7-day retreat begins. And we will have a closing ceremony on the Sunday at the end of our winter retreat, which goes from December 1 to 7. And then that closing ceremony is a Dharma combat ceremony in which the Shuso gives a short Dharma talk, and then people come up and challenge her. And that's a rite of passage for the Shuso because it's scary. And a good rite of passage should kind of scare the bejesus out of you, and then you survive it. And part of what that does in terms of training here is that someone is going through a rite of passage to move from being a student to a senior student. So once a person has been a Shuso, they are now known as a senior student. They've kind of moved up and they have more responsibility in terms of the Sangha, and they're beginning to teach and explore what that's like. So we're trying to move people along into places of more responsibility in terms of how they function in the Sangha. That's part of what we're always thinking about. We want to carry on the Dharma, and the Dharma gets carried on for people that make, more commitments to that practice and really make it part of their lives and make commitments to serve the community.
Me again.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in exploring Ongo a little further and what it would mean for you,
Yeah.
what requirements there are, what flexibility
Yeah.
there is,
Yeah.
what would be the next step for someone to take?
The next step would be to meet with June May and talk about it.
Okay, and June May is Kelly,
Kelly, yeah.
and she'll be making herself available at certain times, or is
I
that
don't
not
know.
clear
It's
yet?
really, you work that out with her. You can email her. I think we have her, if I don't have her email on the,
I'm thinking for everybody here. Yeah, like, is it in the Ongo website?
I think it is.
Okay.
And if it's not, I will put her email there so you can contact her.
Great.
Nothing is written in stone here. We want you to make make a commitment, and it would be great if you could come to both retreats, but it's not a requirement. There's no rule that says this is what you have to do to be in the Ango, but we want you to have some clear intention that you want to increase your practice, and then you meet with Junmei to talk about what that would be, and then you kind of commit. When you know what you don't want to commit until you know what you're committing to, yeah? So there's classes and study groups in Ango. You most likely might want to participate in those, but it's probably not a requirement either. So that's something you would discuss with Kelly.
And there may be some people who have never done sesshin. So do you want to just briefly say what the schedule of sesshin might look like?
Well, yes, I think a lot of people are intimidated by retreats. So we're increasingly doing shorter retreats. We did a 3-day retreat last month. First of all, if you don't have a meditation practice, I don't recommend that you come to a 7-day retreat. Because my experience is that when people try to do a 7-day retreat is intensive meditation. And if you don't have a meditation practice, you're likely to feel overwhelmed. And my experience is that people that do that feel overwhelmed and discouraged, and they just stop sitting altogether. And so I don't want that to be the result of you signing up for a retreat. So I ask that everyone that, first of all, to do a 7-day retreat here, you should have some kind of meditation practice. And if you do, then I would encourage you to join the retreat. You can do it full time. You can take it as a 7-day retreat. You can do it as a 3-day retreat. The 7-day retreat goes from Sunday night to Saturday night, the 1st of September to the 7th of September. The 3-day retreat goes from Sunday night to Wednesday night. You can do either one. You can also do the retreat part-time. You can do like all the mornings or all the evenings, and you can do it online or in person. It's non-residential, so you have to take care of your own lodging. And it takes place in blocks of sitting. There's a morning block followed by a service, and then we eat breakfast together, and we have Samu work practice. After breakfast, we come back for a mid-morning block of sitting where we sit, and then there's a Dharma talk. We have lunch, and then there's a break in the afternoon to rest, and then we resume sitting at 3 o'clock for a block. The blocks of sitting are always 3 periods. Each period is 25 minutes with a walking meditation in between. So at the end of the afternoon sitting, we do a sutra reading, brief, and then we have dinner, and then we rest again, and then we have an evening block of sitting from 7 to 8:45. And that's basically the schedule. And if you sign up for the retreat, we are asking you to follow that schedule. Is that good?
Yeah, I asked it. I know what it is.
Yeah. If you have a sitting practice and you haven't done a retreat before and you're feeling a little intimidated by it, I encourage you to kind of put your toe in the water and try it out. You might be surprised. This is not something that most people can do by themselves, although there are people that do retreats by themselves. But usually you find that when you join a retreat like this with a Sangha, an organization, there's a schedule, things are done. Once you've decided to be in the retreat, you've already made the choice. So you just go along with the schedule, and that becomes a container that holds you. And it's easier to do because everyone else is doing it, and you can't make shortcuts and skip something because everyone will notice you're not at sitting, and someone's going to ask you, where are you? But the retreat and the schedule becomes and the ritual becomes a container that holds you in that container and allows you to do it. And then you find that at the end of 7 days, it's something is really it's transformative. It's a very deep, transformative practice. And in the Zen tradition, we encourage people to do retreats as often as possible. They're very valuable, and they're not always easy. I'm not going to lie to you. They can be difficult, but there's some value in going through those rough moments as well. And again, you have a lot of support from the Sangha, and both from June Roshi and me, who have been doing these retreats all our lives. So we kind of know the territory.
Hi, good morning, Roshi and Sangha. Lovely to be here. One comment I have and then one question. For the Ango period, I think it's very motivational and helpful to mention that there's also 2 extra meditation periods every 2 nights a week. There's going to be additional meditation with the Sangha as well, online and in person.
Yes, the way we've set up the schedule now is that there's a meditation Tuesday and Thursday night. And each week, one of those evenings will be either a study group or a teaching a study group with Junmei, or a teaching that I'm giving. And then the other night will be more, so the sitting starts, I think, how have we got the schedule?
The sitting's 6:30 to 7.
Yeah, so 6:30 to 7 if there's a class, and 6:30 to 7:30 if there's not. So if there's no class, it's an opportunity for 2 sitting periods. And that evening schedule will just be for people in Ango. And then the morning sit will be the regular morning people that always sit with us, whether you're in Ango or not. You can come to the morning sit, and that we'll just include that as part of the Ango as well.
Okay. And then my question, typically signing up for retreats, you're given options as to what type of retreat you want to take, mornings, 3-day. This particular one, signing up for Ango, it was just the one-time payment, so it didn't allow a selection of how you were going to participate. So do we reach Junmei for that?
I'm going to be contacting each of you and asking you how you want to do the retreat.
Okay, thank you.
I will ask you to commit to the way you want to do that retreat before it begins, whether you want to do it part-time, do it as a 7-day retreat, or do it as a 3-day retreat. Whether you're doing it in person or you're doing it online, all those things. I will clarify that with each of you that sign up for the Ango.
And then we'll redo that clarification process closer to the December one, obviously.
Well, part of making the commitment to Ango and meeting with Junmei is you'll be working out all those details, how you want to do the retreats.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So it's kind of helpful to make commitments and hold ourselves accountable and have, it's just, I think it's helpful to hold ourselves accountable for things that might be a little difficult to do. And we kind of raise the bar, and then we're all doing it together, and you find that it actually works out really well. I've had some really difficult Ango trainings, but I've never heard people laugh so much as in Angos. There's just a lot of good spirits, even in the midst of the most difficult times. It's really amazing. Any other questions? If not, I think we're done for today. Thank you, everyone, for coming. And I hope you will consider taking the Ango this year. Okay. There's a sheet here for some of you on the Ango if you want to